I want to start today by taking us to one of my favorite corners of the internet, the Are No Stupid Questions subreddit.
Okay.
It's a place where you find people asking, how to boil water right next to someone asking about the nature of existence.
Yeah.
But I stumbled across a thread recently that it stopped me. The question was 3 words. Is sex art?
Simple question, but I imagine the answers were like anything but simple.
Oh, it was a total war zone.
Yeah.
You had this one user, Critical Morale, who was just super logical about it. He basically said, no, hard pass.
Right.
Art can be sexual, like a nude painting, but sex itself is biology. It's instinct. You don't call eating a sandwich art, do you?
That's the standard pragmatic view. It puts sex in the same category as, I don't know, digestion or sleeping.
Exactly. But then you had user Dirty Hippie 62, and yes, that is their real handle.
Of course it is.
Who came in swinging from the other side. They argued, but sex can be artful. It has the potential, and it fulfills that potential when done right.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, my gut reaction was to side with Critical Morale.
Mm-hmm.
Calling sex art feels a bit pretentious, like something you'd hear at a poetry slam.
It does sound a bit high-minded at first glance, but I think Dirty Hippie 62 might actually be backed up by some pretty serious scholarship.
And that is our mission today. We're going to see if we can vindicate Dirty Hippie 62 using actual science and philosophy.
Right.
We've got a stack here that includes a report called The Somatic Masterpiece, some heavy philosophy from Richard Schusterman on somaesthetics,
Right.
Michel Foucault's History of Sexuality, and a really fascinating evolutionary review on the sexual selection of creativity.
And just to be clear for everyone listening, we aren't talking about is porn art or is a movie sex scene art.
No.
We are asking if the act itself, 2 people in a room, the embodied experience, can be elevated to the status of a creative masterpiece.
Okay, so if we're going to treat this seriously, we need a definition. Because when I think art, I think of a painting, a sculpture, a film. There's a thing you can point to. If sex is art, where's the canvas? What is the medium?
According to the Somatic Masterpiece report, the medium is embodied presence.
Embodied presence.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there because that sounds like yoga studio jargon. If I'm a listener trying to figure out if my sex life is art, what does that actually mean? Is it just paying attention?
It is a little abstract, so let's ground it. Think about the difference between, say, walking to your car to get to work and a dancer moving across a stage.
Okay.
Both are walking, both involve legs moving, but the commuter is goal-oriented. They just want to get to the destination.
Right. The commuter's just thinking about the traffic or their coffee. They aren't feeling their feet on the pavement.
Precisely. The dancer is inhabiting the movement itself. So in the context of sex, embodied presence means you aren't just rushing toward the orgasm, the destination. You are fully inhabiting the body. You're sensing temperature, breath, texture, heartbeat without judging it or trying to fix it.
That makes sense. I guess a lot of people treat sex like that morning commute. It's just, okay, let's get this done so we can go to sleep.
Right. And that is biology. That is function. Art requires intention. And just like painting requires brush technique, this art form requires attuned communication.
The report used a music analogy here that I really liked. They compared it to a duet.
Yes. Imagine 2 jazz musicians. If one of them is just blasting a solo, eyes closed, not paying attention to what the other person is playing, is that music?
I mean, technically, yes, but it's bad music. It's a mess.
Exactly. To make it art, they have to listen. They have to adjust. The psychologist John Gottman calls this turning toward. In a relationship, that's answering a question. In bed, it's a nonverbal dialogue. It's interpreting a sigh, a shift in weight, a micro-expression. The technique here isn't about knowing 100 positions from a magazine.
Right.
It's about extreme sensitivity to the other person's feedback loop.
So Critical Morale on Reddit says it's just biology. But this research is saying, no, biology is the instrument. How you play it is the art.
That is a beautiful way to put it. The expressive goal here isn't just reproduction or stress relief. It is the co-creation of shared meaning. It's about playfulness, vulnerability, and accessing something the report calls the sacred, bridging that gap between being an animal and being something more.
But here's what confuses me. If sex can be this, high art form, why have we spent the last few centuries treating it like something dirty, or at best something private and functional? It feels like we culturally separated art and sex a long, long time ago.
We did, and we can actually pinpoint when and why. This is where Richard Schusterman's work on somaesthetics comes in. He argues that in the West, specifically around the mid-18th century, we created a hard split between aesthetics beauty and eros desire.
Okay, so who ruined it for us?
Well, we can look at philosophers like Immanuel Kant and Schopenhauer. They had this idea that to truly appreciate art, you need to be disinterested.
Disinterested sounds like you're bored. Oh, nice painting, whatever.
Not bored. It means you have no skin in the game. Think of it this way. Imagine a beautiful oil painting of a bowl of fruit. To appreciate it as art, the brushstrokes, the lighting, you have to look at it objectively.
Okay.
But if you are starving and you look at that painting and your stomach growls and you just want to eat the grapes, Kant would say you aren't appreciating the art anymore. You're just following your appetite.
Okay, I get it. So because sex involves a massive appetite, the literal will to live and reproduce, these philosophers thought you couldn't possibly view it as art. You're too involved or too hungry.
Exactly. They viewed sexual desire as an animal instinct that clouds your judgment. It disrupts the cool intellectual contemplation that high art requires, so the museum got separated from the bedroom.
But that's a very Western idea, isn't it? Because I feel like other cultures didn't have this massive wall between the two.
You are right. If we look east to ancient India and China, they didn't have that split. They had the concept of ars erotica, the art of love.
And this is where everyone thinks, oh, the Kama Sutra, the book with all the pretzel positions.
And that is the biggest misconception. Schusterman points out that the Kama Sutra is not just a gymnastics guide. It describes sex as a performing art, fully on par with dance, drama, or music.
So it wasn't just insert tab A into slot B.
Not at all. It involved choreography, specific gestures, vocalizations. It was about refining raw sensuality into a meaningful performance. It was staged, it was deliberate.
And we see that on the temples, right? The Khajuraho temples in India.
Yes. These temples are covered in explicit erotic sculptures. But they are on a temple. That tells us that for that culture, sex wasn't some shameful secret to be hidden in the dark. It was integrated into spiritual and public life. It was a valid path to the divine.
However, I have to play the skeptic here. We can't just romanticize this. When I read about the Kama Sutra and these, courtly arts, it sounds incredibly elitist. And frankly, pretty sexist.
You absolutely have to call that out. The source material is very clear. This art was for the wealthy, literate men of the court.
Right. It feels like the woman in these texts isn't really a co-artist. She's more like a violin, a delicious instrument for the man to play to show how skilled he is.
That is a valid critique. The man is the director of the erotic drama. The woman is often treated as a skilled prop. So when we talk about reclaiming ars erotica, we have to be careful. We want to reclaim the idea of sex as a refined skill without reclaiming the patriarchal power dynamics that came with it.
So the East had ars erotica, even if it was flawed. What did the West have? You mentioned Michel Foucault earlier. I remember reading him in college and feeling like my brain was melting.
Foucault is heavy, but his core point here is brilliant. He contrasts ars erotica with what the West developed. Scientia sexualis, the science of sex.
The science of sex. This connects to what Foucault calls the repressive hypothesis, right? The idea that the Victorians were super repressed and never talked about sex.
Foucault actually flips that on its head. He says the Victorians didn't shut up about sex. They talked about it constantly, but they didn't talk about it as pleasure or art. They talked about it as a medical problem.
Oh, right. They were obsessed with categorizing it. Is this normal? Is that
a perversion?
Exactly. They were analyzing children, criminals, the mentally ill. They turned sex into something you confess to a doctor or a priest to find out if you are healthy.
And we still do this. Think about it. We don't have sex art columns in magazines. We have health columns. Is 15 minutes normal? How many calories does it burn? Am I dysfunctioning?
Precisely. We treat sex like a car inspection.
Yeah.
We are looking for faults. We are looking for the truth of our biology.
Yeah.
Foucault's argument is that this scientific view killed the artistic view. We became obsessed with analyzing the mechanics rather than enjoying the music.
We turned it into a problem to be solved rather than a song to be played. That is actually kind of depressing.
It is. It strips the magic out of it.
So Foucault says culture taught us to be scientists about sex. But, and this is where the pivot happens, what if nature actually designed us to be artists? This is where we have to look at evolutionary psychology. Because even if we strip away the culture, the philosophy, all the Victorians, there is a biological engine underneath.
And this brings us to the sexual selection of creativity.
Oh.
And my favorite animal in this entire stack, the bowerbird.
The bowerbird is the ultimate counter-argument to critical morale on Reddit.
For those who don't know, tell them what this little guy does.
So the male bowerbird builds a structure called a bower. It's like a little hut, and he decorates it obsessively. He finds blue objects, berries, beetle wings, bottle caps, and arranges them in front of his bower.
And he's incredibly picky, right?
Yeah.
Like if you move one blue bottle cap an inch to the left, he freaks out and moves it back.
He is an interior designer with OCD, but here's the kicker. The bower does nothing. It doesn't keep the rain out. It's not a nest for eggs. It doesn't help him catch fright. In terms of survival, it is a complete waste of time and energy.
So why does he do it?
To impress the ladies, it is ornamental creativity.
It's an art gallery to pick up chicks.
Essentially, it's a fitness indicator. The theory is called the mental fitness hypothesis. The idea is, look at me. I am so healthy, I am so efficient at finding food and surviving that I have all this leftover energy to build a useless art installation.
It's a flex. It's like a guy buying a Ferrari.
Yeah.
He can't drive it 200 miles per hour in traffic, but just having it proves he has resources to burn.
And this applies to humans, too. The sexy son hypothesis suggests that females might choose creative, flashy mates, poets, musicians, artists, not because they're good providers.
Because let's be honest, they often aren't.
Right, but because they have good genes.
So you marry the accountant for stability, but you have a fling with the drummer for the DNA.
The data actually supports that nuance. Women in their fertile window tend to show a stronger preference for creative, artistic men for short-term mating.
But there is one detail in the research that just blew my mind. The hand axe. The sexy hand axe theory. Because this goes back way before drummers and Ferraris.
This is the Paleolithic era. We find these stone tools hand axes that are Acheulean. And some of them are, well, they're too good.
Too good.
They are perfectly symmetrical, they are beautifully crafted, sometimes they are huge, too big to actually use for butchering a mammoth, and sometimes they are made of rare, beautiful stone that is hard to work with.
So imagine a guy 500,000 years ago. He could make a sharp rock in 10 minutes to cut meat. But instead, he spends 3 days chipping this thing into a perfect teardrop shape. Why?
The theory is that the hand axe was the first art object. He's showing off his cognitive skills. Symmetry requires planning, patience, fine motor control. By holding up this beautiful, uselessly perfect rock, he is signaling to the group, my brain works better than his.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
So the drive to make things beautiful, even tools, is woven into our mating instincts. It's not just some cultural overlay.
Exactly. We are descendants of the artists.
Yeah.
The ones who could make the symmetrical axe got the mate. So Dirty Hippie 62 was right on a biological level. We are wired to value the artful presentation of ourselves.
So let's try to put this all together. We have the biology, the bowerbird and the hand axe, telling us that we are designed to perform and create beauty to attract partners. We have the history, the East treating sex as a refined drama and the West turning it into a medical exam. And we have the practice, the somatic masterpiece idea of embodiment. How do we synthesize this? If I'm listening to this and I want to turn my biology into art, what is the actual step?
It comes back to that somatic masterpiece report. The first step is reframing the environment, and the most critical tool for that is consent.
But wait, consent usually feels like the legal part, the contract?
Yeah.
How's that part of the art?
The report argues that consent is the canvas. Think about improvisation. If you are in an improv comedy troupe, you can only be funny and take risks because you trust your partners. You know they aren't going to suddenly punch you in the face.
Right. Safety is the precondition for creativity.
Exactly. If there is any fear, the brain goes into survival mode, biology mode, fight or flight. You cannot make art in survival mode. Consent creates the magic circle where the rules of the real world are suspended, and you are safe enough to be vulnerable, to be playful, to sketch.
To sketch. I like that.
And once that space is safe, you focus on the transformation. The ultimate goal of this art form isn't the orgasm, it is the dissolution of the ego.
That sounds like the Ars Erotica again.
It is. In a moment of true somatic connection, the boundary between me and you blurs. You create a shared narrative. It bridges that gap Foucault talked about. It uses pleasure to reveal a truth about connection that you can't get from a textbook or a doctor's visit.
It stops being something you take from a person
Yeah.
and becomes something you make with them.
And like anything you make, it requires failure.
This is the final thought I want to leave our listeners with. It's something that struck me when I was reading that Reddit thread again. If sex is an art form, think about how we treat other artists.
What do you mean?
If a painter makes a bad sketch or a musician hits a wrong note during rehearsal, what do? They laugh, they turn the page, they say, well, that didn't work, let's try again. They call it a study.
Right. Failure is part of the process.
But in sex, If there's an awkward noise, or a position doesn't work, or someone loses their rhythm, we feel this intense shame. We feel like we failed the medical exam.
That is the scientia sexualis mindset haunting us. We think we failed at being normal.
But if we adopt the art mindset, those awkward moments are just sketching. They are rough drafts.
That is a profoundly healthy shift. It gives us permission to be bad artists sometimes so we can eventually become masters.
So that's the takeaway. Ignore the Victorian doctor in your head. Channel your inner bowerbird. Find a safe canvas, and don't be afraid to make some messy sketches.
A masterpiece takes time.
Thanks for diving in with us. Now go create something.